Let's design a garden that actually feeds your family. And we're going to start by looking at your layout. Now, there's a million layout options out there, so how do you decide what to plant and where? Well, number one, we've got to determine what are going to be our anchor crops. Now, these are the non-negotiable crops that we need to grow to feed our family. So to determine what your anchor crops will be, you need to sit down with your people and ask them, hey, which veggies do you want to eat? And make a list, a real list of the things your family will actually eat on a day-to-day basis that you could grow at home. Think replacing the grocery store more than growing flashy new varieties that look cool on Pinterest. We are looking at production here, and we really want to start to fill our table with homegrown food. A really easy way to approach a garden layout is to think about this in categories. So first, you're going to stick in your quick win crops. These are things that are going to produce fast and bring instant food to your table. Think things like radishes that can grow in just a month. Greens, we're talking collard greens, we're talking Swiss chard, lettuce, any kind of leafy green is your friend. And these quick wins are going to give you fast results that are going to boost your confidence. And while you're waiting for those anchor crops to grow, the bigger things like cabbage or broccoli or Brussels sprouts, you're getting some harvest and some quick wins while you wait. So thinking about alternating timing, where something like cabbage is going to take a long time to grow, you want to be harvesting while you wait. So you've got to plant some quick crops in there too with the greens and the radishes. Maybe you want to do some carrots or some beets. Root crops are good quick win veggies that you can add to your rotation. So once you have a list of quick win crops, then you want to think about your workhorse crops. And now these are the calorie dense foods that you're going to rely on to feed your family all winter long. So look at things like cabbage, maybe a fall round of potatoes, some winter squash. Maybe you want to grow a hefty load of beets. Root veggies pack a good punch of calories, but you want to mix in those quick win crops with some workhorse crops that bring a lot of calories to the table, whereas your quick wins like lettuce, they're going to be a great meal, but they're not going to bring a lot of calories. So you've got to have a mix. So we're going to have our quick wins, we're going to have our workhorse crops, but then there's one more category. We also need to add our flavor boost crops, and these are the herbs. And if you don't know already, spoiler alert, I'm a bit obsessed with herbs. I grow a lot of them, and it's because herbs do such an important job in the garden. Number one, they're bringing in pollinators, which means ultimately we get a bigger harvest. Number two, they're repelling pests, so it's making it easier for us to grow the food we need. But number three, they're bringing a flavor boost to our table and to our recipes. And you can fill any bare spots in your garden after you've put in your anchor crops and your quick wins. And you can fill those in with herbs to be flavor boost to complete your dishes. So picture the moment where you make a pot of beautiful vegetable soup this fall and you fill it with all the veggies out of your garden. But it doesn't stop there. You also season it with herbs like thyme and rosemary and sage that you also grew right beside the vegetables that are in that pot. And herbs just take everything to the next level. You want to layer your plantings. And what I mean by that is we're not just going to plant one time and be done. Instead, we're going to continually plant through the season so we keep food growing well into the winter if we can in your climate. And so what I want you to think about when you look at a bed layout is number one, what are those anchor crops, the most important crops your family needs to grow? You're going to place those maybe towards the center of the bed, but then start filling in. What kind of fast growing crops can you add around the edges? Think things like those leafy greens. Maybe you do a row of lettuce at the edge. Maybe you squeeze in a row of bush beans. Maybe you tuck herbs in the corners. I love to put herbs and flowers in the four corners of every garden bed. But you want to continually think of layering, not just one crop, but I have one bed, but how many crops can I stack in this bed over the course of a few months? Don't get stuck thinking you need one bed that's nothing but broccoli or one bed that's nothing but cabbage. When I first started gardening, I really fell into that whole monocropping trap. And what I mean by that is I thought, okay, here's the list of veggies I want to grow. So I need one bed for corn, one bed for tomatoes, one bed for Brussels sprouts, one bed for beans. And what I've found is when you plant that way, you create a pest buffet where if they find, for instance, if the squash bugs find your squash bed, you're done. It has immediately found your entire crop. But if instead you stuck one squash plant in each of your beds, then those squash bugs would have to work a whole lot harder to find your whole crop and wipe it out. So instead of grouping things by crop, think of grouping them according to number one, how they're going to grow. Maybe you could plant some sage next to your cabbage to try to repel those cabbage worms that tend to wreak havoc. And then maybe you could tuck some carrots around the edge of the bed to take up the extra space and prevent weeds from popping in. And then maybe you decide that you want to plant some beets on the other side of the bed. And so suddenly we've gone from having, instead of just one crop, we have 3 or 4 different things we're harvesting out of the same bed. And as those quick growing crops like lettuce and greens are harvested and we pull those out, well, now we have a chance to replace them and we can plant a whole nother crop in that bed. So instead of just getting, 9 heads of cabbage out of my little bed, I'm going to get 9 heads of cabbage plus multiple sowings of carrots and greens, maybe radishes, and then all those beautiful herbs. So layering in our crops makes a huge difference in the ultimate amount of food we can harvest. And so I want you to get away from that trapped thinking of I have to do one crop in one bed. And let's get creative. Let's mix it up and layer the crops in and see what a different result you might get. Now, one of the most challenging things is timing, because we're working around a frost date. That frost is coming. We know it's right around the corner. And so we're trying to squeeze in as many crops as we can before the frost. And then we want to continue growing after the frost with cold hardy things. You want to use timing to your advantage. Instead of looking at timing as a challenge or a problem you have to solve, look at the timing as your guideline so that you nail your planting. Use it to guide you. If you only have a short window to grow, then grow crops that are easy and low maintenance and are not going to require a lot of babying from you. Think things like leafy greens, lettuce, root veggies. Those crops are pretty hands-off as long as you've got good pest protection in place. You also want to choose varieties that are going to mature fast and maybe even tolerate a little neglect. So choose varieties that can withstand a little neglect and withstand the cooler temperatures. And so another thing you can look for are early maturing varieties. For instance, in the fall, the tomatoes I grow are called early girl tomatoes that will mature quickly so that I can make sure I get a good late harvest of tomatoes before that first fall frost hits. So choose your varieties carefully. We're looking fast maturing, something hardy that doesn't need a lot of maintenance, and something we can get in with enough time to grow before a frost might come and wipe it out, or something that can withstand frost and continue to thrive in the cool weather. Overwhelm comes from growing too much, too fast, without a plan. And I tell you this from experience. Back in 2020, I planted my first garden on this property, and I went all in. I filled those beds up with tons of crops. But I did it in the exact opposite way of how I just explained it. Instead of layering my crops, I did one crop per bed, and I had neat little rows and neat little beds with my crops very divided. And I planted a lot of stuff all in the course of like 1 or 2 days. I just planted the entire garden, and I was like, done. My garden is planted. I'm ready. Well, as you can imagine, I had some issues. Number one, my garden was a pest buffet because I had my crops so separated in categories, which made 0 sense once I started to actually grow food and realized it didn't grow well that way. So that was my first mistake. But then, number 2, I planted way too much, and I planted it all at once. So that meant that fast forward just a few months, and I'm now... Number 1, I'm not getting a great harvest because of the way I planted, but what I do have to harvest is ready all at one time. So there's no margin to stagger this out and harvest a little here and a little there. Instead, there was 1 week of sheer chaos where I suddenly had just buckets and baskets and wheelbarrows full of food. And I suddenly had to figure out, what am I going to do with all this stuff? Because it's already, at the same time, I don't have fridge space. I don't have a basement or a root cellar. What am I going to do with all this food? And I had a total preservation crisis. And I'm really sad to tell you that we ended up having to give away a vast majority of our first crop that year because I didn't know what to do with it. And I was afraid it would just rot and go bad. And so when I look back on that first season here on this property, I had such good intentions. I wanted the big abundant garden. I wanted to feed my family. My motives were good, but my methods were terrible. And I'm guessing if you're here with us and you're wanting to learn, maybe you want a garden and your motives are good, but maybe your methods have been kind of terrible like mine were. And so I want to challenge you to rethink your entire strategy, your layout, making sure you're adding those layered crops, making sure you're not just planting it all once and walking away and never coming back until time to harvest. You want to spend time in your garden, and you want to choose varieties, again, that are going to mature quickly and be a bit low maintenance. So as you are going through and planting your garden, the most important thing I want you to remember is that your garden is yours, and there are no rules. You get to decide what you're going to plant, when you're going to plant it, and you get to break all the rules. And in fact, I think breaking rules in gardening is the best part of gardening because most of the rules are really stupid anyway. So instead, we're going to experiment and we're going to try new things and we're going to see how we can make this work. And if we fast forward a bit, in 2020, that first garden was a bit of a disaster. But now in 2025, my garden is producing 80% of my family's food. And I mean, we've come a long way really quickly. And truthfully, the biggest change happened when I started to look at, number one, succession planting and planting more than once, and number two, layering my crops and choosing the right varieties. I want to encourage you to think outside that box that maybe you've been planting in for a very long time and try something different. Get in there and really think about, like, what could this look like for my family? And see yourself in that garden. Who is that person? What do they feel like when they're out in that garden? And envision it and really see yourself living that dream out. And you're going to. We're going to get you there.